Yeah, g'day team. Welcome back to another episode of Ruggerzheadz Sports Chat. Lots to talk about this week. We've got another couple of games of Super Rugby and also in the NRL there are plenty of injuries and plenty of yellow cards. And in the NRL, yes, we're starting to see some teams stand up above the rest. Rugby, let's just jump straight into it. The Chiefs lost to the Blues in Hamilton. The score was 12-24. It was a typically good Blues versus Chiefs game. Crowd was, I think it was pretty much a sold out crowd, and with, as expected, a lot of Auckland fans travelling down for that, especially with the Blues doing so well. Unfortunately, the Blues fans have a bloody short memory. The Chiefs won at Eden Park not so long ago, this year of course, and this one was the first time that the Blues have won in Hamilton since 2011, so it's been a long time between drinks. To be fair to them, the Blues dominated most of this game in pretty wet conditions. Pretty much every area of the game they dominated, but I would suggest that it was mainly in the forwards. And I'd put it largely down to a lack of experience in that Chiefs pack at the moment. The Chiefs have got quite a long list of injuries, which I think would be worth my while just running through them quickly, because not for any other reason other than my own mental health. So, we've got Sam Cane now, All Blacks captain. He should be back, I think, this weekend. Nathan Harris, ex-All Black. Angus Tarvale, All Black prop. Hatunasa Moli, All Black prop. Michael Allardyce is out. Mitchell Brown, Tyler Ardron. So those are all forwards, and certainly make up a big part of the engine room, who, they'd all be playing if they weren't injured at the moment. So, the Blues, their domination was definitely in the forwards, which is not normal for them. They won 2 scrums against the feed, and, I don't know what Brodie Retallick's doing, but it would be great if he made himself available for the Chiefs. I do know that I have read recently that Brodie Retallick is back in New Zealand. He's still currently on a sabbatical, so there's no rugby in Japan, so he's one of the other guys that have come back. But Warren Gatland did ask if Broads could play, but he said no. Look, I'm gonna stay resting at the moment, rest the body, and then get back into it. So Ben Smith's in a similar boat too. Then the last game on Sunday for Super Rugby was Hurricanes versus Crusaders. Hurricanes 25, Crusaders 39 in Wellington. Crusaders played like they hadn't even had a break. They scored a try in the first minute through Sevu Reece. Other than that, it was a pretty close game. It was 25-all in the 64th minute before the Crusaders then switched back into gear and managed to score 2 tries to close the game out and really make the score look more one-sided than it was. In the end, though, it was 5-1 to the Crusaders, and you can definitely see that the Hurricanes are missing a bit of attacking options with the Barrett brothers both not available. Obviously, Bodie's at the Blues now, but Geordie's out injured. He can't be far away, must be a week or two. Unbelievably, the Blues are actually leading the competition with 2 wins from 2 games. It's hard to argue against the fact that they're actually a pretty decent team. They're much better this year, and it's about time that we sort of saw this sort of thing from the Blues. It's been a long time coming, and certainly then you add Beauden Barrett into the mix, and you can tell that they are just a step up above where they have been for a long time. He just helps control that game, a little bit more than what game control they have had, and he certainly has that experience. And I think with Otere Black playing first 5, and just operating and managing that side of things, Beauden Barrett can sort of sit back and relax probably a little bit, and certainly Otere Black's goal kicking well, so Beauden doesn't have to worry about that. I think it'll be a great game when the Blues play the Crusaders in Canterbury in about 3 weeks' time. Other than that, we've got Super Rugby in Australia starting in about 10 days, so it'll be good to see what happens there. And back to league now. The Knights played the Broncos in the first game of the round. Knights winning 27-6 against the Broncos. Knights are still going strong, and after this win are currently sitting second place on the ladder. Broncos are still struggling and still have a number of injuries. They only scored 1 try, which was through an intercept. although there was a disallowed try early in the first half that possibly should have gone their way. The try the intercept try they did score was through Xavier Coates, who looks like he's going to be a future star. He's tall, he's big, he's quick, and good in the air. So they've been talking about him being a bit of a Greg Inglis type player. The score was 13-6 at halftime, so the Broncos were well in it. And then after halftime, the Knights really owned the rest of the game, especially with Patrick Carrigan going off for 10 minutes, being sin-binned after a late shot on Mitchell Pearce, which was really a cheap shot. Mitchell Pearce was facing the other direction. Carrigan won't play this weekend. He's already been suspended. So yeah, and rightly so. So from a fantasy point of view, obviously the Knights dominated this game. Pearce top scored with 76, including a try. And if you look at Pearce a bit more closely, if you take out the -1 score that he had in round 3, he actually averages 60 points. So he's probably undervalued at this point. I picked him up this week, so needless to say, I'm pretty happy about that. Ponga scored well again and is definitely a must-have and wing fullback if you can afford him. Daniel Saifiti and David Clemmer are a couple of the best props this season and could be good replacements for Alex Twal, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Daniel Saifiti is good value. I think he's almost $100,000 cheaper than David Clemmer, for example. Haas had a quiet game by his standards, only scoring 55, which is pretty good. Most people would have had him as captain, so we had been getting more points out of him in weeks gone by. Pakes, the rookie halfback turned hooker, unfortunately only played 33 minutes for 14 points. Now that Isaac Luke is playing for the Broncos, and Anthony Milford is still struggling, had another below average game. I think it was 25 points. Rabbitohs versus Warriors was the first game on Friday night. The Warriors continue their week on, week off roster. I think they won since the competition resumed. They won, they lost, they won, they lost again this week. So you don't really know, as always with the Warriors, what to expect. I think that it might have been a slightly different result though if Cody Nikorima didn't get sin-binned in the first half, which I felt was a 50-50 call. I'm not biased or anything. And then David Fusitu'a he was high tackled to score. He was going for a try in the corner and Latrell Mitchell high tackled him, which stopped him from scoring, but technically should have been considered by the bunker. At least they didn't even look at it. So if you take those two things into consideration, that was about 2 tries to the Warriors there. The Rabbitohs might not have scored that try when Cody Nikorima was off, and then Fusitu'a would have scored. It could have been a level game. There's been plenty of yellow cards being dished out in this competition so far. 2 were dished out in this first half of this game alone. But the Bunnies played really well, and they'll love having Cody Walker back, who played really well in his 100th game and scored a try. From a fantasy point of view, Damien Cook's top scored the round with 103 from this game. He's really starting to find his stride with the new rules. And Latrell Mitchell scored a solid 45 without a try. That included 2 try saves. One, obviously, was the Fusitu'a one. Unfortunately, Kalisa Katoa had his lowest score of the season due to an injury with only 25 points, so a lot of coaches would have been upset about that. And he may not play this weekend because he had an injury during that game. RTS is still struggling, only scored 24 and has actually now dropped 161k from his starting price at the beginning of the season, and still dropping, I'd say. Patrick Herbert had a very, very quiet game on the Warriors wing, only scoring 4 points from 80 minutes. Panthers versus Storm was the other Friday night game, and this was a really good game. Panthers won 21-14, probably one of the upsets of the round. Very close game. Scores were level at 14 all with less than 20 minutes to go. Then Nathan Cleary stepped up with a try, assist and drop goal and a match-winning performance to seal the game. Things are starting to click for the Panthers now that Cleary's back. He had a quiet game last week, but certainly dominated this game. So, coming back after suspension, he's definitely hitting his stride again. The highlight of the game was probably when Cam Smith questioned the referee on a decision. Cam Smith went out of line just to take out a player running through to chase a kick, and then and was questioning it with the referee, and the referee said, "Oh, do you want to challenge it?" And Cam Smith sheepishly laughed it off and carried on. But, Cam Smith needs to be challenged more. He gets away with way too much. Usual suspects from a fantasy point of view performed well in this game: Cleary, Munster, Cam Smith, Coruscant, Yeo. But yeah, for Melbourne's wingers, they had a really quiet night, only scoring a combined 25 points. So first game on Super Saturday, Titans versus Dragons. Titans 8, Dragons 20. Quite a boring game, really. Two low-ranked teams. 2 tries in each half. Dragons have now won 2 in a row, and they were really struggling for a while. I think they've probably played 2 easy teams in a row. James Graham looks like he's going back to the UK, so that could be his last game for the Dragons. We'll have to wait and see this week. Corey Thompson for the Titans, the new Titans fullback, had just transferred from the Tigers. Was his first game for the club, and he had to go off with a head injury. It looked like it may have been a broken jaw, but I think he's been cleared of that, so he's just going to have to follow through HIA protocols this week. McInnes top scored in this game from a fantasy point of view with 66, his lowest score this year, believe it or not, but still has an average over 80. Fotuaika wasn't far behind. He's a Titans front rower, really young guy, looking really strong, and playing really well, playing big minutes. He scored another 64 points and could be a good replacement for Twal. If you did have Twal, Fotuaika's got an average of 57, and I think his value's still climbing. Lomax still scoring well in that tricky centre position with 51, his highest score this season. He's a goal-kicking centre, and he's averaging over 40. He's consistent, and he's also dual wing fullback too, so he's in probably quite a lot of teams. Tyrone Peachy only scored 7 points in 57 minutes. Tigers versus Cowboys was the second game on the Saturday. Tigers winning 36-20. The halftime score was 34-0 to the Tigers. They had a half of footy that you wouldn't believe. Everything came off. It was laughable at the end. It took 50 minutes for the Cowboys to score their first try, which was an intercept try to Drinkwater. And after that, the Cowboys managed to score a few more tries to win the second half, really. And the Tigers only scored 2 points in the second half. So it really was a game of 2 halves. Alex Twal and Robert Jennings went off injured in the first half. Twal, they're saying he's done his MCL, so he could be out for about 4 weeks. So we'll have to wait and see a little bit more on that. Zane Musgrove went off injured in the second half, so there was 3 Tigers injured in that game. Harry Grant, the rookie hooker, continues to impress, and in fantasy as well as the NRL. He's got another 66 fantasy points. Drinkwater finally had a good score after a few quiet games. A lot of people would have sold him this week. He was probably the most sold player. I sold him myself. But yeah, he managed to bounce back with 61 points. New Cowboys rookie Fidel, who played fullback, was probably the most bought player this week. He only scored 22 points, but that wasn't too bad considering his score was -4 at halftime. So yeah, a lot of people may be disappointed with that, but he still went up in value. Roosters versus Eels was the last game on the Saturday, which was definitely the game of the round. Roosters winning 24-10. This was the Eels' first loss of the season, but they're still at the top of the table. The score was only 8-0 at halftime to the Roosters. Eels came back in the second half, scoring 2 tries by the 60th minute to actually take the lead 10-8. And one of the tries was one of the better tries this season so far, with Mako Sivo scoring in the corner and on his way to the try line running over Tedesco. Teddy went off for an HIA and didn't actually return to the game. So Teddy's going to have to go through the HIA protocols this week to see if he can play. After the Sivo try, though, the Roosters scored straight back with Boyd Cordner. So after Boyd Cordner scored, Jennings then spent the last 10 minutes of the game on the sideline, making it that much harder for the Eels, and the Roosters scored in the last few minutes to make the scoreline look worse than it was. Ryan Madison top scored in fantasy for this game with 88, and he is really looking like a must-have in the second row. Kyle Flanagan scored another 60-plus score with 63, and now his average is 55. He's still good value, I think. He's a goal-kicking half in the best team in the comp, so could be worth a look. Teddy leaving the game early meant he only scored 34 points, which would have upset quite a lot of people that brought him in this week, especially after his 111 last weekend. But he still is above his B break-even at the moment. Walker Blake scored 7 points for the game and had a grand total of 8 missed tackles. Raiders versus Seagulls. This one was possibly the upset of the round. The Seagulls winning 14-6. An amazing effort from the Seagulls. They really are a title contender if they can get their full squad on the field at every week. Martin Tapau didn't play this game because of his dislocated thumb, so he was a big out already. But then in the first 5 minutes, the Seagulls had 2 injuries to Dylan Walker and Brad Parker. Then Tom Trebojevic went off with a hamstring injury in the 52nd minute. So you take all that into account and they were definitely up against it. The Seagulls' defence was great though, really. That was the difference, and it was just all heart. The Raiders only scoring 1 try. Yeah, I think the Seagulls can be a real contender this year. They beat the Roosters by 1 point in round 2. They lost to the Eels by a refereeing mistake in the last minute a couple of rounds ago, and now beat the Raiders. Losing Tommy Turbo, though, for a few weeks will definitely be a big loss. But he'll be back. He's had an hamstring injury, so I think at this stage they're saying he's out for 6 weeks. He'll be back when it matters. So if they can still string a few wins together, they'll be right there in the mix when he gets back. Elliot Whitehead top scored with 69 fantasy points. Turbo scored 52 points from 52 minutes after going off early. He was on track for a big score. Of course, Walker and Parker had low scores for going off early. And Nick Kotrick only scored 9 points, which will put a halt to his price rises after going up 141k in value this season already. Sharks versus Bulldogs, quite a close game. Sharks winning 20-18. And the Bulldogs had a chance to win the game right at the end, so it was anyone's game. Both teams had someone spend 10 minutes on the sideline, couple more yellow cards in this one. Not a bad game considering it was 2 struggling teams. Sione Katoa scored 3 tries for the Sharks on the wing, and Bryson Goodwin also scored in his first game back to the NRL after 3 years out. The highlight of the game was probably the big tackle by Watini Zelezniak on Matt Moylan. Definitely worth a look if you get a moment. From a fantasy point of view, Katoa's top scored was 73, and Sean Johnson wasn't far behind with 72. Andrew Fafita now is back. He could be worth a look. He scored 47 points in 32 minutes. So not a lot of minutes, but points per minute is as good as you'll find. Still has a high BE at the moment, but he could be a 12 replacement option if he gets more minutes. Jack Williams scored only 20 points from 43 minutes at lock. I've talked about him before. Yeah, look, it was another great round of rugby league. Had a bit of everything. I think with 8 yellow cards for the whole round, it's an average of 1 card a game. I think they've really got to sort that out. I definitely think there's more yellow cards than there needs to be, and certainly there are more yellow cards than we've seen before. We also had this week the first coach sacking. It was Stephen Kearney at the Warriors. I was expecting a coach to lose his job around this time. I wasn't expecting Stephen Kearney, especially considering the situation with the Warriors being in Australia, away from home. Stephen Kearney being a massive part of that and mentoring the guys through this. I think that the timing is awful. I think they've definitely made a mistake on the timing, and the players are hurting as well. They've come out vocally to express that. I think that Stephen Kearney, the writing was on the wall for him, but I definitely think this timing is all wrong and could potentially derail the season for the Warriors quite dramatically. So in hindsight, they should have probably let Stephen go at the end of last year, or certainly just persevered throughout this season and get to the end. On the other side of things, there's an opportunity now for the Warriors to secure a great coach, and there are definitely a few eligible candidates around. I think I like the look of Jeff Tuvey. He's he's got a proven track record at that level, and I think he's got a hard edge which I think the Warriors could benefit from. Huge challenge, he said so himself, but it could be a good one. Well, I think that just about covers it.